All right, my phone says it's 6:30, so let's get going. We got, at least I hope we have a lot to get done tonight. Um, um, My goal, and I really want to keep it short until we get this done, is to get through section 14.7 and section 14.8 tonight. We didn't get that done last week and feel like we're a little bit behind. But before we do that, I want to ask Darren to talk a little bit about the commissioners meeting and stuff we probably need to know about what they talked about. So Darren?
Monday at the commission meeting, they came to the consensus to make sure, keep moving through the regulations. And, I presented them a date of the February 26th for the public forum. There was discussion of maybe doing it later in March. I reached out to Prairie View. The latest they can go is March 4th. But they wanted to leave the dates up to the committee to decide.
So,
March 4th is the latest you can get that room. Yep.
so it's either the 26th or the 4th.
That's,
That's their options.
yep.
And how fast do they want that decision?
I told them that I would give the dates tonight and they'd like to know by Thursday or Friday.
Well, I guess we better talk about that.
Our people are asking for it to be pushed a little bit.
To the 4th?
Well, now that we have that date, I guess, but they would prefer to push it into March than February.
Can you just confirm, are you saying that the 18th is not available, or are you saying they just don't book it out that far in advance?
I'm saying that it's already booked.
So why do they want to push it forward?
Because we've been asked to put together some meetings for people to come to hear stuff, where there's going to be congressmen and senators there too.
I feel like we just need a little bit more time to just rally people to get them involved and see what's going on. But
Once the date is set and everybody's agreed upon it, we're going to be putting out information in our grassroots movement to get people notified. We're not leaving it up to the newspaper. We're going to do our own stuff. So people on both sides know that it's there.
So the last meeting, the perception of the last meeting was we didn't get word out to everybody, and not everybody knew about it. I think we need all the time we can get to be sure we don't not turn a stone over. We gotta get word out. The people are for it, people are against it. Everybody in the county needs to know. We need to do it with the message system. We need to do it with the newspaper. We need to do it with Facebook. Whatever, but the more March 4th date gives us, another week to get that done?
Right.
I think that 1 week is worth it,
Okay.
just for the simple reason is we need to be sure everybody in this county knows about this meeting.
Yeah. I guess that's what I would favor too. I mean, it gives us another week. I think we can get this done. It's still January. We've got all of February and some days in March. My preference would be March 4th.
Yep.
I'm seeing heads nod yes. So Darren, can you inform commissioners we want March 4th?
Yep.
Charlene talked to me this week and has an idea I think has some merit. Charlene, you want to talk about that?
Well, we talk about education and information to everybody. But some of the people I think may not be getting all that are the planning board. So I think that I'd like to suggest that we say that this committee, whether it be in 1 trip or 2 trips, 3 trips, take a tour with Darren around the area that these are going to be in, go by where Emily lives, go by where Allie lives, go by where Mark lives, where the historical sites are, so that just looking at a map, you really can't tell it. I mean, I drive over there, but I don't have the exact map from Clearway with me, and I think it would be a good idea to have a tour where we all go around there. I mean, I think it'd be a good idea for the commissioners too. That's just my suggestion, is that we do that, because I hope Darren would be willing to do that.
The Planning and Zoning Board did this earlier we went to Bourbon County and saw the solar array they have over there. It's 7 acre one. It's smaller than what we're talking about. But it gave us an idea of what it really looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like. And to me, it was a really, really important thing for us to do. And I guess I have the same feelings about this tour. Let's get out there and let's tromp around and look at it.
I mean, I want to see how it's going to look from Emily's house, and how it's going to look from Allie's house, and I want to see how it's going to look from the Briggs' house.
It's gonna look really nice at yours.
Yes.
It would be very
Okay.
beneficial, I think.
Party at my
I think,
house.
again, the more information we can gather, the better. So.
So I agree with the idea completely because when I went to meet with Allie and Emily, it was very eye-opening for me sitting in Allie's house and having her explain to me with the land that was leased up around her. And you put yourself in those shoes and you get a different perspective. I think bringing a rangefinder or a 500-foot tape would be helpful as well, so where you can understand what an actual setback looks like from.
That's great.
Or maybe if we could get the county to go out ahead of time, put some flags in of distances for setbacks or something to help us visualize what that actually looks like. I think that would be extremely helpful as well.
Darren, what say you on this?
That's fine. I'll just have to get permission from the landowners to go on the property.
Okay. You can't.
Can we count on you to do the legwork and schedule and all that good stuff and let us know and
How soon you want to do this?
Well, I
try?
think that it needs.
Do we want to do it on a Saturday so everybody's available?
Well, I think we may have to do it on more than one Saturday because it's going to be hard to get everybody available probably on the same Saturday. So it's up to you if you want to do that. But I think it should be on Saturday in the daylight so people can see it. I mean, I think as soon as possible because I mean, this will affect our decisions.
One more thing, huh?
No, I'm looking at my calendar to see when I can do it. I can probably get a hold of people and try to get out there next week to get some flags out. And, can I have it? Not this coming weekend, a couple of weekends before we do it.
Whatever you need, Darren. I mean, I know this is far beyond the call, but whatever you can do, how as fast as you can do it, yeah, but don't.
So would, Saturday, February 10th work for everybody?
Works for me.
February 10th? Works for me.
Yeah, works for me.
That's not.
I gotta check my two daughters' volleyball tournaments for that weekend.
Like I said, it might be two different trips because
And
it's hard to get everybody.
that's fine, we could do the 10th and the 17th.
Everybody could just make an effort to try to make one of those dates. And if we can't get everybody there, we just can't get everybody there. But I think it'd be helpful for us to have a critical mass, one or the other, to help sharpen our eyes on this thing.
What time?
If on the 10th, the afternoon works better for me. My girls have basketball that morning.
I think in general, afternoon would probably be a better time than trying to get it done in the morning.
1 o'clock, 2 o'clock?
2 is fine.
2 o'clock.
I mean, I just think that it would show that the planning board is interested in knowing. I mean, we can all drive by there. I've been by there several times, but I can't exactly know where this is gonna be, and if Darren can help you with that.
Okay, we're gonna shoot for the 10th and the 17th at 2 o'clock. Very good. One other issue that we talked about early on, and it raised a question for me last week. We talked early on about having somebody from the energy companies sit at the table with us. And we didn't do that, but I mean, last week Josh was just as much a part of this discussion as the rest of us. And I just wonder if we shouldn't invite the representative from the energy company. Josh comes one time, Barry comes the other, to have a seat with us so we don't have to be saying it's okay for you to
Can
talk
I-
to the back.
I have a strong opinion on that because these are emails of before the regulations were done that they were all involved in the first time. Constantly, and they shaped the regulations. We were not involved in this. I didn't know what was going on, but I would have been here if it was. So, I mean, these emails, I think it's past their time. If you have a question to ask them, I don't think they should have a seat at the table because they don't live in the county. They just want to bring their product here. That's my very strong opinion.
Well, my thoughts were just it'd be easier instead of yelling in the back, hey, can you tell us this and tell us that, just be right. But
Well, actually, when I was watching the video of the commissioners, to me, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, it seemed like they said we'd have two people from two people from, and a representative of the industry. It didn't say that?
yeah, I had Darren check it.
It didn't say that? Okay.
Uh-uh.
So I was wrong.
And I think to keep the numbers even, I think we're just gonna have to call when we need it.
Okay, all right, sounds
Yeah,
good.
they said, I think they agreed to have, somebody from the industry in the room just to ask questions if needed.
All right, well, let's just proceed as we.
I do want to go on the record as saying something. I like the suggestion. Unfortunately, I wish it was a third party, not someone that had a proposal that they're
Yeah.
considering in our county. At the same time, I don't want to discount that they shouldn't have a seat here because they don't live in our county, because we're willing to allow people that don't speak in our, or live in our county to speak at the public forum.
That's
So
true.
we can't use that argument to our benefit and not to our detriment from time to time. So I
That's
just
fair.
want to be on the record
Yep.
for that.
We need to make sure that when we hand them the microphones, they're turned on, and when they come back, they're turned on.
Okay, let's get down to this 17 or 14-7 and see if we can work our way through these next two sections tonight. 14-701, all applicants for conditional use permits shall submit with their site plan a plan for setbacks and screening meeting the following requirements. And here we go. This is the tough part. So,
Before you get going, Richard, I got a question.
okay.
Just on the background of why we split it up to less than 40 acres, greater than 40, and greater than 160. That seems to be the premise of what you set in play.
Right.
What's the background?
I don't remember.
The 160 cap was the difference between commercial and industrial.
Right.
And I think the 40 was just
Arbitrary.
arbitrary, just a
Splitting.
general, split.
It mostly had to do with keeping the setbacks in proportion. And what we started out with was a fixed number, and the fixed number for a smaller farm was a bigger encroachment on the smaller farm and less of an encroachment on the bigger farm. And so it just ended up being kind of a graduated approach, I think, if I remember. It's been a while.
So, suggestions for setbacks, suggested changes in that.
So I personally read through them again last night with Emily, and I just feel that it's written, it's still confusing to me, actually, some of the wording. So like if you're, for an example, I'll just use my house and what's leased around my house, because I've talked to Darren about this many times, but it's less than 160 acres, so it's 150 that's leased around my house on all four sides. So my house is in the middle of it. and it's less than 150. So to me, that shows that it's a 200-foot setback, not the 500. When you read through B.
Sorry, are you saying that your property is 150 acre?
Correct.
Well, the 150 is for the actual conditional use permit land, not for your land.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My land's my house in 10 acres. The land that's leased around me is 150. My aunt
You got
owns.
the balance of the 160 then.
Yeah, exactly. I own 10 acres.
Your aunt chose the
The
lease.
aunt has the 150 with the lease with EDF.
And is that the whole project? Would that be the whole project, or is that?
It would not.
So
And
we're
that
talking about
was
whole
the
project.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really know. I mean, it would
Yeah, I don't.
be determined. I don't think that we can, like right now, it shows 150 through EDF leased, register of deeds. However, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what they're going to ultimately bring to the table. So it could be more than 150. And that is exactly what Darren was explaining to me. If the project that EDF brings is greater than 160, then my setback would be increased. But I just think it's confusing. I don't know. Do you not think it's confusing? Because see, it's like,
Then I was
okay, but even if,
so.
but even with Darren saying, well, it's the whole project total. Well, it never says that anywhere.
Keyword is the permitted area. For SECS with a permitted area. So that means the grand total of everything that they're asking in the conditional use permit.
Well, maybe if we just add the word total in there.
Yeah, we could add whatever we want.
SEC with the
And I wrote-
total permitted
I
area.
wrote down
Yeah.
total acres for the CUP or
Yeah.
anything is fine. But that's what it's referring to, so we can reword that however we need to.
Secondly, I would like us to look into other options as far as having different tiers, like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. I've seen a lot of other counties that have, they've just graphed it differently than I feel like we've did a lot of paragraph form in this. I sent, I think, Spencer County to Darren for you guys to look at. That's one of the ones I'm looking at now. I don't remember if Douglas County or Butler was the same, but I've just seen it broken out a little bit different into tiers or groups. Oh, the CSCS,
Yeah.
tier 1, tier 2.
It's like some of the counties will put it like in tables versus like each one of these, the C is exactly the same in each one of the permitted areas. So that never changes. There, in the past meetings that we've had, we pushed the wildlife area and kind of the setbacks and buffer plans regarding all of the historical places down here. We said that we would push it to when we talked about the setbacks. So, I mean, that's something we have to consider as well, too.
I think too, for me, the Heartland, which I have that one with me tonight, if you guys are interested in looking at that, I don't think I forwarded this one on, but this is the plan for Heartland and their solar farm. It's 7 acres. And so I just feel like it's really confusing to understand that their plan would actually be commercial and not listed in the first tier 1 here on our setbacks.
Just because of how they're going to utilize the energy by
Exactly.
versus utilizing it. Okay. So I
Yeah.
want to come back to the 200 feet versus 500 feet. So if that was less than 160, in theory, they could, if they chose to, construct solar panels within 200 feet of your home,
Right.
from your back door.
Yeah.
Surrounding it.
But
Not the property. Well, it's not the property line. It's the home.
from the residence itself, yeah, from the structure. So I'm just trying to do rough math here. So if it was over 160, it'd go to 500 feet, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if your house is 100 feet wide and we required them to move back an additional 300 feet, you're talking about 30,000 square feet that they would lose. You follow my logic here? 300 feet further away, 100 feet wide. So it's less than an acre. An acre is 43,560 square feet. I think it's a small concession to ask them or us to consider a further setback to make it less intrusive on someone's home that's there.
I agree. Would we start at 500 or and then move the next one up, next one up. Or just have the first one be 500 and the second one be 500.
The people in the area that their homes are going to be surrounded, there's two concessions. They're asking for at least a mile, and they're asking that it be from the property line, not from the actual home. So like Mark's talked about, he's got his acres that they're going to butt up to Clearway's project. He's got 4 kids that he hopes are going to be building on his property. So to say in the future, they build by the road, the solar panels will be right there. So residents, in looking through all of these different things, there is precedence for saying from a residence versus a property line.
And you're saying a mile from the nearest residence?
Property-
I don't think that anywhere in the county that would work.
I know.
That's
I
kind of.
know. I'm saying the World Health Organization, the CDC, they have 1.2 miles.
Can I interject something just a bit? I've done this at our other planning board meetings. When I've said, whenever somebody cites a statistic or a figure or something they've gotten off the internet, that I would like them to either hand that out and show us where they got that information right then, so that we're not hearing misinformation or things that are just from this place or that place. I mean, I asked that, that's what we do at the planning board meetings now, because I asked for that. Just, I mean, when you start saying CDC and blah, 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 last week you said National Wildlife. Those figures were from the National Wildlife. You said that, I've got it off.
I said
that?
No.
I'm
I said,
sorry.
when you read that paragraph, you said it was from the National Wildlife.
yes, yeah.
Right. When I looked it up, there was one statistic in there that was from the National Wildlife, but that wasn't what they said. In fact, I have a quote here, what they said, that they support renewables because.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you didn't say
Absolutely.
that part.
That wasn't my point.
I know. So that's the point, is that we need to hear not just.
I mean, if you want, we can read the whole article. I mean, and you can
Right,
pick and
but the one
choose.
that you read wasn't from the National Wildlife because it's
There's
not in there.
context missing is what you're saying.
They'd taken a figure out of there, whatever article you had, but that wasn't from that article.
Okay, that's fine. I don't know that you've had the article in front of you.
I actually do on my other computer here, but yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, I can go back and look at that and I
There's
can
some
provide it.
for 2023, yeah. And I can give you the place to go look at it at too. So, but we do that at our planning commission meeting. We say, we started that because we kept having a lot of, all kinds of information on the internet without any, citing the sources.
So to your question, is 500 feet the starting point and the most appropriate for 40 acres or less? And then it increases based on the size. I don't know that I don't
It's
necessarily
better
have an
than
opinion
2
about that, right?
at least.
Yes.
Yes. I'm not
If you
sure.
get your setback too far, then that means a parcel under 40 acres wouldn't have much usable space left to put any panels on it
Yeah.
at all. So I think that becomes problematic at that point.
And also in here, we do say minimum setback.
Right.
So I don't think we need to go and write this for the worst example. Write it for what's most likely going to happen, what the average scenario is going to be, and then if necessary, we can move it and make it larger.
And in each case scenario, we could put conditional uses, we could put uses in it.
Is there a
And that's why
guarantee?
I was going to say, and to that point, I just feel like number one, you should protect your citizens with our regulations. Number two, if they agree that they want it that close, then they can come and get the conditions in the conditional use permit. I do not agree that we shouldn't protect the people that are going to be living around it first. And then if you want it closer to your house and you're okay with that, then you can come and ask for a condition on the conditional use permit.
Darren, if it clearly states in the language that the setback is 500 feet and a CUP is filed and an adjacent property adjacent property owner comes and says, I'm okay, instead of 500 feet, then 200 feet of my home, can you go the opposite direction? Or since the language says a minimum?
So I can't remember where it says it in here, but it says that, a property owner can sign a waiver.
Okay.
So give us the setback, and if they want to sign the waiver,
Right,
they
that's why.
can sign, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Also, I've seen where, and I don't know where I saw that, but when your home is surrounded on all four sides, I saw in one of the regulations, I don't remember which county it was, but they can only surround your home on three sides, not all four. So I would be interested if you guys would want to
Is that,
give any comments on that, because with my personal,
is it gonna be on all four sides?
yeah.
Mine will be 3.
That's the reason I wanna go out there.
Yeah.
Have you seen the final site plan yet to show?
Well, there
Oh,
are,
I'm sorry, to see where on each of the properties leased on all four sides, they would actually place those.
place them?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so it's possible.
EDF hasn't shown me anything like that. But again, I'm not signing with them, so I would never see that until probably the conditional use permit was applied for. Unless they were open to giving that information out to me before, but
And that'd be the same, not just for solar projects, anything that required a variance in code where a CUP is required. The adjacent landowner wouldn't be notified until that process is started.
yeah,
And that's standard practice for any.
correct.
I personally I understand the concept completely of basing it off a property line and not your dwelling. Just because there's always the future opportunity to split that parcel and give it to your kid, just like what Mark is saying. And really, at that point in time, you're building on the property line, and if a house would have been there then the setback would have been different. You can't control, just like, you don't ever know what the future's gonna hold. And if you base it off the property line, then it doesn't matter where the person's house is on the current property. Makes more sense to me in the long run,
Yeah, I agree.
looking into the future.
It should wording that I've seen in some is setback from a non-participant or non-participating.
Right.
So if they're not participating in the project, so many feet from that property line. And I think you're right. I think you never know what's gonna happen to that property down the road.
I think you get rid of some, if we could just get rid of anything about a residential dwelling and just base it all on the property line. It makes it a lot simpler. In that situation, honestly, who's gonna develop commercial solar on less than 40 acres anyway, except for Heartland, who's gonna do
Hartman's
it?
example.
Agreed.
Companies.
I understand your point about being proportionate, but at the same time, if I'm that property owner and my house sits there, I don't care if it's 40 acres or 160 acres. It's the same thing, set right against my house. So from that perspective, I don't really think it matters how big of a development it is. So I think there needs to be a happy medium reached there somewhere to where this is what it is, regardless of the size.
So it'd be cleaner if it's the property line rather than the dwelling.
I think so for sure.
Well, to give you an example, when all of this was just beginning, we split and gave our kids 2 acres up at the northwest corner, not knowing that they're going to be, my grandkids are just going to walk out the door and be surrounded by solar panels, because I would have never done that. So, I mean, that's just, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I think that happens more often than not in this county. It's family land that gets split and handed down to the different generations. And I think if we're looking out for them, we need to base it on property lines for that reason.
So can we take one step back and see if we can find some common ground here? Are we okay with the 3 tiers that we've established here? The less than 40 acres, the 40 acres or more, up to 160, and the more than 160?
I think
The
that's-
3 tiers, just going over the acreage?
Yeah.
Okay,
Are we okay with that? With,
yeah.
okay.
So if we do that, then we'll have different setbacks for each tier. Is that what you're saying?
The same way we have now.
Yeah, each one of these tiers has different
Yeah.
figures. But I'm kind of getting back to the core of this. Are we okay with the 3 tiers, the way they're set up?
Right.
So we're okay with that? All right.
If we have the 3 tiers, what should the setback, how should they vary from one tier to the next?
That's where we're at now.
From the property line, not a dwelling, if that is the direction we want to go.
And I know that in talking about the setbacks, they go to, well, it's a minimum. It can be dealt with in the conditional use permit. I know that that's said in good faith, and I understand that's the process, but there are a lot of property owners that don't have faith waiting. They want something in.
Let's save that discussion because I want to try to get one more hurdle that we can maybe find common ground on. Are we all, I mean, it seems like the sentiment in the room is that it's not the dwelling, it's the property line.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Where are we at with that?
good with that.
Mhm.
Non-participating property.
I like the non-participating.
Yeah, I was gonna say, non-participating landowner's property boundary is how it's stated in Senate Bill 481 proposal.
That sounds great.
So if I own an 80 that runs a half-mile deep and I share a half-mile of fence with a solar farm that's proposed, I'm going to get a setback, which we were ready to specify of so much distance from my property line. If I own this property and it's clear that it will never be developed, never be split, I own it and I'm willing to concede that, and the company that's filed for the CUP wants to approach me and say, are you agreeable to signing off on a waiver that will reduce that? I would have the right to do that as a non-participating person.
Yeah.
Knowing that that concession is available to the solar company to ask for it, and me to say yes or no to, as part of the CUP process, I think that's a really good place to protect everybody.
All right. So we're in general agreement that it's the property line, not the dwelling, that we measure from.
Non-participating property lines.
Yeah, non-participating. I think we need to make sure we got that language. So Emily, that gets us to now we've got to decide what the numbers are for each one of these tiers on the property line.
Can I ask a question about that? So we have a minimum of 2,500 foot setback from another SEC, SECS. It's another solar farm. You gotta be 2,500 foot away to build another one. Why are we giving one solar company 2,500 foot before they get to the next guy, but we're giving the property owners a whole lot less than that setbacks? There's gotta be a reason why the 2,500 was there. Seems like we're granting the different solar companies what we are, further setbacks than what we are the property owners, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
In some of the counties, the regulations say they have like a minimum of 3 miles from project to project.
I saw our solar representative.
Barry, can you come forward with us a mic that we can, so they can catch the recording?
Sitting here.
Now, Barry, just because you're there doesn't mean you're part of the group.
So I just said I'm not actually sitting. It looks like I'm sitting, but I'm not sitting. No, so it's to prevent daisy chaining of projects. The 2,500 feet is fine between projects. I just because there's this context of other counties, I wanted to just provide just so the committee, we figured this come up, so we just did a survey of all the counties that have solar regulations in Kansas. And there is a debate in each of the counties about residential participating and non-participating, but I'll just go through these very quickly so the committee has this context, and then I'll go sit in the back. Butler County is 1,000 feet from residential dwelling, 150 feet from the property line. Okay, so that's an interesting distinction. The house is set back, property line's 150. Reno County, 50 feet from a public road, 100 feet from a participating or non-participating landowner's principal building. Harvey County has no regulation
You're going
on
kinda
this.
quick
Yeah,
there. Would
go
you?
back.
Yeah, no,
Reading those?
I'll happily.
Yep.
And
So
I'm
Reno County is what?
He
Happily.
also sent this out in an email.
happy to send this out.
This is the Excel file that came out.
Kingman County, 10 feet from the safety fencing in the front yard, on the side yard of non-participating owners, 10 feet from the safety fencing. Johnson County, 50 feet from the project boundary, 250 feet from dwellings located outside the project area. So that would be non-participating landowners. And then Douglas County, 500 feet from any existing residence unless a lesser distance is agreed to with a waiver. The buffering or screening may be within 500 feet. And then 25-foot buffer area, which is, I think, the next section of this section that we're in here, shall be provided and maintained. That's the vegetative screening section. That's Douglas County. So those are the counties that have regulations on this particular issue. And then, of course, our ordinance here in Linn, which is actually more restrictive than all of those. So just for context, you've already got the most restrictive in the county, in the state of Kansas. But that's not to discount what you're suggesting
Yes.
is important to you guys. So I'm not trying to discount it. I just am reciting what's already on the books in other counties. So, thank you.
All right, thank you.
But let's just not forget too, that there are counties that have banned it as well.
Yes.
Prohibition on it. Also on Butler County, there are some things that we haven't got to yet. They did put a prohibition in the Flint Hills. So there are some things that we definitely need to still discuss regarding.
I thought you were gonna address my question about the 2,500 feet. I don't know your name, Mr. Soul.
Very.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Said to present.
I thought you were gonna address it. I understand prevent daisy chaining.
Yeah.
I get that. But, short of not just happen on the next one, is there any reason why you need 2,500 feet from the next guy?
We don't need it.
Okay.
County sought it, and we are fine with that. We don't need it. So the interesting thing, I think, again, I know there are two projects that are proposed in the county, so I can only speak to our project, which is up in the northeastern corner of the county, is and I want to note this for the site visit that Ms. Sims proposed. I'd like to suggest, you guys have a buffering requirement, and then you also have a vegetative screening requirement, which is really aggressive. I mean, when we get to that next section, that's a very aggressive vegetative screen that you've already got. That will require us on Yancey Road to put in a whole bunch of bushes and trees. So I'm not sure how to represent that to the committee members that come out for the site visit, because those trees don't exist today, or they do in spots, but they won't once there's a full vegetative screen to comply with the ordinance. And so, I think it's a good idea to go out and see the sites. We welcome you to that, as long as Darren noted, we got to talk to our landowner if you guys want to go onto his property. But I think it's important to contextualize that for the site that we're interested in developing. I can't speak to the site that's down by you guys, and I apologize if I could. I'd try to offer some comfort there, but I'd like to think through how we can represent it accurately on the day of the site visits, so that you're not just looking at an empty field in the middle of the winter where there's literally no vegetation because it's the middle of the winter, and have it more accurately represent what would be required of us if we were to move ahead.
Are you going to bring some trees in?
I don't know. I'm just sitting in the back brainstorming ideas. Maybe they're in that space. I don't know. But I mean, it's a,
Things I've seen done in different cities is a snow fence
yeah.
representing what the screen that would be required.
A vegetative screen is, you're not on vegetative screen yet, Chairman. I don't want to jump ahead. When we get to the vegetative screen, it's actual though, but it's full plantings, and you have an offset of 10 feet on the plantings, and we are really, really familiar with that because we've done that in other places. It's really hard to represent that on just a site visit 4 years before those would be, up 3 years before they'd be up and growing. So I'd like to think that through. If you could give me an opportunity to think that through, so that we could do our best in potentially even set out something that looks what a solar panel looks like, so you could look at it. You should have that opportunity because it's new to the county. So I appreciate when we get to that, we can think that.
I'd like to finish my thought.
Yes, sir.
You did answer my question. I appreciate that. The 2,500 foot setback from another solar farm. Personally, if we're going to let solar in the county, why would we take this guy leased his land, this guy leased his land. They're allowing solar on their farm. Why are we making them be 2,500 foot apart? Slam them together. Who cares? The land. I don't understand why we're dictating that setback from another one. I'm much more concerned about the property owner rights than I am the people who already signed their land away and are allowing them to do it. Who cares how close we let them put
I'm not sure why
together?
we did that.
I'm not either. Is there anybody?
I think the idea is you don't want them all concentrated in one part of the county. You don't want them so close together they become one huge 8,000 or 4,000 acre solar farm.
So that was my thought process too. Because I have seen other counties that put a 3 to 5 mile with each project. So is it because we were trying not to get like one area too congested with the solar and kind of move it around, spread it out the county? Was that the thinking on?
I think it was. I think we decided that we didn't want them all jumbled together.
Mhm.
But I'm not. It might have been a Dr. Kopp suggestion that we all went with.
Now,
I don't.
understand.
I hate to interrupt. I just got a message from IT. Try not to touch the mics. They're really expensive. Try to leave them separate.
Important note. Okay, moving on.
Proposed Kansas statute's got 3
Is he
miles.
serious right now?
So I think
I just got a message.
there's, I think we gotta think that through. We don't want them all in one spot.
So
I
that's
understand, but every situation is different. And
yes.
I think it is very apparent that there is one spot of our county where everyone wants to put these solar farms. Down the road, maybe that may change and it may be economical to tie in at a different spot and maybe that would be apparent. But where they're proposing now is where no other land is leased in the county other than right there in that spot. For this situation, like, they're going to be in that area. I would rather have them just all shoved together and allow us more setback from the property owners and push them all together in one spot than be spread out over multiple acres in that area. That's my opinion.
Swap the setbacks around, just reverse them.
Yeah, here's your area. If landowner A and landowner B both sign their land away, then tie them together. I don't care. Well, it doesn't make any difference to me as long as the property owners around it that aren't participating have proper setbacks. Now, that doesn't help down the road if they do want to build it, just keep expanding and expanding and expanding on it. I get that completely.
But if you shove them all together and you put them around 500 feet around all the homes there, I mean, it's kind of like a catch-22. I understand what you're saying, but the more you put in there, the more will be surrounded, and 500 feet is not acceptable.
I wasn't saying 500
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree. So the setbacks, regardless if it's property owner or if it's between the different solar farms, they limit the amount of usable land that's leased up by the companies. If we're limiting the amount of land that they can use up, and they're trying to put as many solar panels out there as they can on a parcel of land, if we're going to reduce setbacks and expand setbacks, I think we reduce between the two companies and expand for the property owners. For me, that's more favorable if I'm the property owner, but
So in the section 14701, for every section that C is the very same wording. It's the setback of 2,500 feet from the property line for commercial or whatever the category is. It's 3 places. I guess I'm hearing sentiment. We just eliminate C on each one of those items.
I don't know. Because I can see the opposite point of it too. I understand why it's there now that it was kind of explained. I just think, knowing that they're wanting to put them around the power plant, they're not interested anywhere else in our county at this current
Well,
time.
that's where the infrastructure is already existing to.
So I just find it strange. When I originally read it, I found it strange that I thought we were giving a greater setback because the solar companies didn't want another guy right next to them. So we're granting further setback for them than we are the property owners. That didn't seem right.
Agreed.
To be real frank, I don't remember a lot of discussion about this one at all. I mean, we just kind of took it at face value. Well, that must be something the industry supports, and we just kind of went on with it. So we didn't, I don't recall discussions about that like we're having now.
8,000 acre cap, right? And so it's not like we're going to have one after another, after another, after another come in without having a regulation change anywhere.
Yeah, we've already.
But we were going to circle back to that at the end of it, as far as
What the-
the acreage.
We actually have in writing that it's
4,000.
And we'd
So
agree to
that's
that
even,
change.
you know,
Yeah, to your point there, yes, we're reducing the amount of usable land. If we're gonna give them more land to put more solar panels, I think they should be to adjoining companies. That, who does that hurt? Nobody, as long as the property owners still have their setback. That makes sense to me.
So on each of these sections 3, I'm just trying to see if we can find some common ground here. Are we, okay, what do we do to replace the 2,000-foot setback clause? Do you want any setback at all?
I think you can
Maybe side by side?
eliminate
You
C.
mean paragraph C is what you're trying?
Yeah, see, on each one of these sections, it's same
It-
I
wording.
mean, I would say just let them put up next to each other, right? Because it's not going to be any worse for any house in that area if they butt up next to each other or they're 100 feet
Well, the
apart or
key-
500 feet apart.
Right.
The key language is non-participating that we discussed earlier. So if they are participating and they're side by side, then the buffer requirement looks completely different and the 2,500 feet go away. I'm agreeable to taking C out, but I am going to be more steadfast in protecting the nature of the vegetative screening when we get to that discussion. You know, if you're going to consolidate them, let's make sure we get the vegetative screening done right to do as good of a job as possible to protect the landscape.
And Barry, do you see a problem with energy companies being side by side?
No. I'm not sure why this is in here. I'm sure my colleague Josh will tell me that I've made a mistake. But I actually don't, I agree with the conversation. The fact that it's in here it provides a half-mile setback between two projects, right? 2,500 is about a half mile. So if you guys want it, leave it. If you don't, take it out.
Do you see it in any other communities? This,
Everything's different, so the short answer is I've seen things that are like, hey, you can't have 3 solar farms all right next to each other. But in states maybe with more mature renewable energy markets than Kansas is still like wrestling with these issues. So there's not like an industry standard. So
Would it
again,
be-
we're indifferent to this particular provision. We're totally indifferent to it.
What if we, I don't want to say circle back to it, but if it's a loose agreement tonight and over the next week, we find out that there is a reason why other counties don't want them. I mean, I don't know that there is, but I think it's worth doing research to make sure it's not an issue.
I agree. We'll decide, we'll agree tonight to plan on moving away from the section Cs
Unless
and
something,
revisit if we have to.
You know
And
what?
I am for keeping it in there. I'll just say, I think it should stay in there because you're right. We are the only area that these solar companies are looking at. And it helps us to just limit the amount of solar companies in our area. And I say that we can take out the 2,500 feet. We can increase that 3 miles. I've seen that in other regulations. And that would eliminate, he gets a project going, no one else can come in there. That's,
Where's the
I feel
3?
I feel that anything less than a total ban is a failure in your eyes, and you don't want to try to meet in any type of middle.
I think you're
Yes.
absolutely incorrect. I mean, say that one more time, what you just said. You think,
That anything less than a total ban is going to be considered a failure in your eyes.
okay, so let's stop there. In my eyes, I want a total ban. That's why we're here.
So then anything.
But that does not mean that I haven't read through this, I haven't studied it. Anything in your eyes, you want solar because you think that this county is actually going to financially benefit, right?
Correct.
And you don't care about where my house is at. You don't care that it's going around my family, my farm, hers. So you need to be open-minded as well.
And you don't know that I don't care about that, but I also care about the rest of the tax burden that's gonna fall on the. 90
Possibly.
And where were you at whenever they banned wind? No one's talking about that and how much money. Unfortunately, you were, and so was I. But here we are now. So there's not that much money in this, honestly, if you've done your research on that. There's not that much.
So
And the amount
Bourbon
of-
County just signed in November
I've read all of everything you
conditions.
sent. I know
$5.8
everything
million
about that.
they can get.
It's a
Can.
question.
can.
If the solar
This is-
farm's erected, they get the money. It's
It's all under a
this
pilot.
is what the payment is.
It is not like that.
It's exactly.
I read everything in there. Everything is
Where does it say
conditional.
you can build these
Everything
things and
is
not make
conditional,
payments?
Jeff. I've read through the whole
Where
thing.
does it state in the agreement that you can build this and not make the payment?
Jeff,
I think you're wrong on that,
I
actually.
Show me where it says.
Jeff,
David,
Jeff, so I think the concern is, and I've heard this in other counties, is that sometimes the renewable energy company does not come through with what they promise.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Is there a decommissioning plan to help address that?
yeah, there should be.
Yeah.
But there have been numerous counties throughout the state and throughout the region where they haven't come through. Now, is that because the contract wasn't right? I'm not sure. I'm not even sure we can write a contract. We cannot negotiate, we learned this week, we cannot negotiate the pilot fund.
But Gary Thompson said we could have a pilot agreement contract.
No, you cannot.
We can't negotiate a pilot fund.
cannot
until
do
we
that.
have a contract.
You can only negotiate the fee schedule. You cannot negotiate the pilot. And honestly,
So there's a lot-
our commissioners don't even know where the pilots that we get now are going.
What pilots are we getting now?
They wouldn't know, probably, but we definitely get the Federal Wildlife Refuge. I just looked into that one. We get 17,000, or we did last year, 17,563 from the Federal Wildlife Refuge. Jacob Coulter sent me all of his information on what the state pays in the pilot program after the commissioners actually did not agree to update a road that they were going to go 50-50 on. He's been paying a pilot since the 1950s. The Federal Wildlife has paid a pilot since the 1991. And we have no idea where our money goes in this county.
Exactly. Which,
General fund, nothing's itemized out. So what makes you think that we can trust this county government to put our pilot fund money that we might get, and where's it gonna go? You know, you want internet. It's gonna go in a general fund. That needs to be addressed. It's not okay. Like, you guys are putting all this out there that we're gonna make all this money and it's gonna be this great thing when we can't even figure out where $30,000 is going in the pilots that we currently get. It's a joke.
So those are two separate issues, how you spend money, budgetary decisions. That is an excellent question. You could ask for an itemized copy of the budget. You could break it down by department and figure out where you think inefficiencies are. But a separate conversation is, can a pilot agreement be negotiated?
Cannot.
No.
So the follow-up to that is, what changed or what was done wrong in Bourbon County when they reached their contribution agreement?
I'm not familiar with that situation.
Yeah. So
But I think we're getting off track here. need
We
to
are.
add these
Absolutely,
setbacks.
but I will tell you that I have sent
get
in
going with setbacks.
multiple core requests, and I will show them to you. I can send them to you. They are denied because they don't have time to look into it. That's illegal. And so I will be following up with you guys with all of that, no problem at all. But I have asked for everything with the Federal Wildlife Refuge on their pilot program and the state. David Linn was unable to give that to me. So I went to the federal, I talked to Kate, and I talked to Jacob, and I got it. It's all online. I can give everything to you, but it's just another example of how you guys think that we're going to make this money, and we don't even know what we do with the pilots we currently have. It's very troublesome to me. I think it's something that needs to be addressed, and maybe we can put something in the regulations that shows when we do get money, if we do, that we want it to go to this area and be used for something. I don't know if we can do
so Alan,
that.
let me make sure I understand what you said earlier, where you're coming from. You're really after a ban.
Absolutely.
Okay.
but we're here in good faith. If this doesn't get banned, that our homes and our families are protected, as well as the county.
I mean, what's the point of the public forum? We're going in there to what? Say if we're for it or against it. You can't hold that against us here tonight. We're going into the
Yeah.
forum because we are trying to figure out if the county even wants it. But yet we've asked for time and we've asked to not be here and push it out until we figure out what's going on with the forum. But until then, I'm not saying I'm not going to work with you. I have read so much and I am all in.
You know,
I'm all
I think
in.
This has to do with our regulations right now. I think the 2,500 foot, we've got off.
Well,
I was gonna say about the 2,500 foot, the only thing I could think of is that we may have talked about that for wildlife. Because that would give a distance between.
I would agree that if you want to just stick to because I knew coming in here, you guys, I'm coming in here with showing you examples. I've sent things to Darren. Hopefully he's forwarded that on. If you want to go with the wildlife and pull up that document that everyone should have had an email from me on, those are things that I feel like I have to bring everything to the table here. And I have to back up everything I say with you
Yes,
guys.
yes.
Everything. But you guys don't have to back up anything about solar. I'm here fighting for this, and I have to back up with everything with evidence every time. Every time.
Back in March of 2019, during the Linn County zoning regulations, there were proposed amendments where they talked up to 3,000 feet of setbacks from a property line. And that was in
That was for
2019.
wind.
It doesn't matter. A setback is a setback. It's
It's
3,000.
different for wind, it's different.
Okay,
If
but
you
it's,
wanna-
but 3,000 feet was talked about then. Now we're up to 250, 500 feet. And
So
nobody in here, and we're gonna go look at people's homes, my home, her home. Nobody understands how surrounded by it is. We can't put any glare protection in. We can't put sound protection in. We can't put any of these things in there because it will be dealt with in the conditional use permit. But you surround people's homes so closely that people can't get the internet because of the interference from the project. And we can't talk about that because it's going to be pushed to the conditional use permit. There's a lot of things in here that if it's going to go around our houses, we want to be protected.
So what's the internet thing?
With the frequencies that are put out, the low frequencies, there are studies that can be done prior to the project to make sure. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
in
I
other
was gonna
studies
say, there was
or other
one-
counties.
on the noise on, it was something that we
Spencer.
wanted to add.
Are we on?
It's Douglas County in one. We are
Can you,
on the setback.
can you please email me those studies?
Mhm.
I can't.
Well, he should have already emailed Douglas County out, and I'm telling you, it's Douglas
Talk
County.
about the internet.
Josh, the other guy that comes in with the big red beard, he talked to me afterwards and said, I would prefer to have these in now and not be told later. I would rather do these studies now so it's not a problem down the road. That's just what Josh told me.
I agree.
Is that in
I think
that big folder where they were trying to get things in the regulations?
Huh?
Is that in that big email?
No, we had talked, I don't know, a couple meetings back about some of the stuff that the other counties have. The solar glare, the sound, the internet, stuff like that. For her house, she sits up on top of a hill. So she's just gonna have these solar panels glaring on all four directions from her.
The one thing that I wanted to add was the noise, and this is Douglas County noise. It's in paragraph 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it basically just says the operational noise generated from the solar installation equipment, including inverters, battery storage, components associated with the equipment shall not exceed the noise level of 60 decibels as measured at the property line or 500 feet from existing residents. So that was something I would consider putting in there.
So that deals with setbacks.
We're at 2,500 feet.
Okay,
There's,
we'll get to that in one second. I agree. I think that we should put those things in now. I mean, at least the big things like that, have glare resistance, to have a noise limit. I think that does go into
Right.
setbacks, because if it's too close, then what's the point of having glare resistance? 'Cause it's,
But can we do that with antennas? We can't, and why can't we? Because the legislature took it over.
well, the legislature hasn't taken this one over, so why can't we?
But they're working on it.
Well,
That's,
Well, they haven't done it yet.
that's strictly speculation, Shirley.
That's right.
Strictly speculation.
Okay, anyway.
Which is why we're moving on and not using the 3 mile
Yeah, right,
example, because it's speculative.
So I think we need to get back to the setbacks.
No.
Are there, if we consider things like the glare, are there mitigating strategies that can be used to reduce the glare on panels?
yeah,
Have you been out to one?
I've been by several solar sites.
Did you get it?
I have not
Used
done a
it?
tour, a guided tour.
Was there glare when we went out to that one? Eddie?
Pardon?
I
Was there
think
glare
it's,
off of it when we went?
I didn't see it there.
well,
Was
then
it
they
a
wouldn't
bird?
have a problem with complying with the regulations then, right?
Yeah.
So they, if there's not a glare, then they should comply.
And
Not
we-
every company is going to build the same, Charlene. You have to understand, every company, every one of them are different.
And we can email Darren to email everybody all of the regulations that have those particular circumstances in it.
That'd be great. That'd be helpful.
So back to setbacks, residential. So for me, property line, and I am basing this comment off of Senate Bill 481 that's proposed through the state of Kansas. It is not passed. However, it says, no system shall be constructed in the state unless the setback distance from the site area of the system is not less than 2,640 feet from all of the following: non-participating landowners' property boundary, public building property boundary, federal wildlife refuge, public hunting area, public park.
On the books.
Proposed Senate Bill 481.
So if that's being proposed and it gets passed, then it's going to supersede anything that we do here. So it should not have bearing on what we decide.
Right, it's another
what we
what
want
if.
to do.
I disagree, because in the meantime, if it's not passed, they submit the conditional use permit and then Senate Bill is passed, you can't, it's grandfathered in.
To me, that's another.
I agree with what
what
you're
if.
saying. If we get our county regulations the way we like it, and the state does something after the fact, we were happy with the regulations when we passed them, I have no problem with being grandfathered at that point in time. So SB 481 died in committee on May the 23rd, 2022.
Correct.
So if it's reintroduced this year, it'll be assigned a new SB number.
It has been.
So
That's one of the things that I emailed over to, that Mike Thompson sent over, that they're working on right now. There's 3 bills.
Did it put like a letter at the end of it? I can't remember what.
What was the number again?
Senate Bill 481,
But with the setback, there's 26
a
something?
half mile, 2,600.
640.
Okay.
You can do 23 RS 96.
So in that, the 2640 would be from a non-participating landowner's property line. It's the
Correct.
closest solar array. So if you do that, 40 acres couldn't be constructed on. 160 acres could on a portion of it, provided there were multiple landowners touching on 2 sides that would enable that. But we would in essence eliminate 40 acre solar, commercial solar.
Is that a bad thing?
I'm here to discuss.
So-
regulations.
I'm asking.
Yes,
So
it is a
you
rebate.
would eliminate it if they couldn't get enough acreage around it. If they,
It couldn't be 2,640 feet off of somebody else's property line in 40 acres. It wouldn't lay right. Guess you could be an eighth of a mile wide and a half mile deep, but you'd have to, as I said earlier, have 2 you'd have to have another participating.
right. So it's not impossible. I mean, as long as you've got more than one non-participating.
It would,
So that would cut it.
impossible is a strong word. It would be atypical because it would be atypical to find a 40 that.
So within the area that they've got leased now, they certainly can put a 40-acre solar farm if they wish.
Yeah, so if we want to use, and I'm okay with that, if we want to use what acres have been leased, that's an okay standard.
Yeah, we
I don't
probably
like
shouldn't-
that.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't go there. I
Right.
agree with that. I just, the non-participating property line, I think
Yeah.
we all agree with, and I think that's good. I think we just got to hammer out
That's the standard.
the setback. I'm not sure that 2640 is out of reach. When you say you can't build a 40-acre solar farm if you have 2640, I don't think that's correct.
I would retract what I said. It would be atypical to find an instance where it's possible. And so if if you're an eighth of a mile wide by a half mile long to get your 40 acre, you got to come a half mile down away from it. And the person over here is not an adjacent property over, then that 40's out. In any that is a square, it's 100% impossibility. It would not work on one of those. And so, it would be a very atypical situation.
Yeah,
for
if you have
any
a single, if you have a single landowner and that's all you have, you don't have much anyway.
So if it's a half a mile, 40 acres, let's say it's a quarter by a quarter, is that right? Quarter mile by quarter mile,
Yeah, that's right.
40 acres, a square 40 acres. Okay, so then they really couldn't build on that at all, on any 40
On a
acres.
square, that's
Oh,
correct.
right. And that, we're like, let's look at Heartland. That's one of the things it could, is hurt Heartland. Well, who wants to do 7 acres?
Yes.
If you're an individual that doesn't have a lot of means, your family has 40 acres that has been passed down generationally, and you feel like you can make some money by leasing it out more so than renting it for a pasture or for row crop production, we've taken that right away from somebody in most instances by setback that's that large.
And that's
I don't
one of
think
the
it's fair to
things,
say.
that's one of the
Much
things,
weight as the person who wants to use that property for other uses that we are protecting.
I would say
and that's one
too,
of the things that I didn't see happen last week at all, was no talk about landowners' rights.
So what would you propose? A different setback for a 40 acre?
Well, I mean, we had heard some other numbers, 150 feet in Butler, but 1,000 feet for a house. Johnson County was 50 feet just from a boundary, 250 feet from a house. Douglas County was 500 feet from a residence. Knowing that we have what someone in the industry has described as very aggressive vegetative screening, and we'll get to that. I think 500 feet is a good place to start if we leave the vegetative screening in that condition that's in now.
So in a 40 acre development? Is that what you're saying? 500 feet for a 40 acre development?
Should we be even discussing this if you're gonna go out and actually visit and look? I mean, that just popped into my head.
But it's not just about your property in your neighborhood. These are regulations.
But
for
this,
the whole county.
I understand that, but this is going in my area. It's not going in anywhere else. But I mean, if,
For Linn County Group put out these pictures of all the power lines that are now fair game. So I think we got to be mindful of that.
trust me, there are people that are very mindful of that.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about physically looking at something and going and seeing, oh, this can be intrusive, or, oh, that's not so bad, should we be saying this is exactly what it's going to be, or should this be a proposed conversation until we
All
get
of
a
this
field
is a
trip?
proposed conversation. I think anything that we've already talked about, we can always go back to if someone feels strongly about going back to it. So.
Okay.
Right, I think we've got to hammer through them. The more information we can get, like the field trip or whatever, that could influence us one way or the other. But I think we've got to continue to hammer.
So if I owned a 40 and we shared a property line and you wanted to put solar farms on, but I was non-participating, and so it was required to set back, and we shared that typical quarter mile boundary on a typical 40, I would, or you would be sacrificing 15 acres that couldn't be built on. There'd be 15 acres running 500 feet wide. That's what I would be giving as a concession to allow construction on the other. We're not talking about the other 3 sides of this property yet either. That's pretty significant.
also, when EDF was speaking with me about this, if you were a non-participating and you decided during the conditional use permit that you were okay with that, maybe we could put something in there and be like, you know what, I'm gonna
Yes.
go ahead and sign off.
Yep.
Like, I don't
That
care
would-
if it's up to my fence line. But EDF it's kind of like a good neighbor thing. They actually pay the non-participating parties if it's going to be up to their property line. So I don't know if you guys do that, but EDF had mentioned that they were, how much they were going to pay me. So something to keep in mind.
So on the 40 acre section here, are we talking about 500 foot setback? Is that where we're arriving?
That's the number that I floated.
And like you said, it was a lot, though.
Not 200, 500.
So we were at 25 and now we're going up to 500. Is that correct?
When we get to the next one, I'm going to propose
That's-
500 universal.
So, but on the 40, you would go for 500.
Say that
On
again.
the 40, you would go for 500, even though we really wanted that.
I would.
Okay. So we're still in section A and letter C now. Now we're on letter C, that minimum 2,500 foot setback.
Fall in that category. Does this only impact Heartland, the 40 acres and lower? Anybody know?
It wouldn't just be Heartland if there was someone else that came in and did it though.
We can't write this for just Heartland. This is anybody in the future after these adopted that wants to build on less than 40 acres, this will be applicable to them.
And they'll have a time to come and speak at the public hearing.
Just, they're a long time.
Well, that's what we've been told so many times, so I'm just thinking same goes for them.
So where are we on number 2? Same question on B. We got 200-foot setback now. We need to have a discussion about that. That's the 40 acre to 160 acre size.
Well, I thought the decision was we were gonna go to the property line instead of a dwelling.
Right.
Yes.
Right,
500?
So that's universal between all three,
right,
40 to 160, the greater than.
yep. But we still need to go on 2B, is 200 feet setback where we want to be on 2 letter B.
That's from residential dwelling. I thought we were removing that.
I'll just say, I want 500 feet on all 3 classes because I like the ability of a non-participating landowner to agree to sign a waiver to allow them closer. And if a contractor wants to sweeten the pot and pay for that, then that's something you should have the right to negotiate as a non-participating landowner.
Well, even if it's 1,000 feet, they can still do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
I like 500.
understand, your point's valid regardless of
Yes,
what the setback.
whatever the setback is.
The vegetative buffer gets bigger in each class here.
That's where I really
That is,
focus.
from a developer's perspective, that is a not insignificant consideration from a cost. And that's our cross to bear, but it's, I agree with where you're going, which is you keep the 500 feet, you allow the conditional use permit process to play out, and the county can impose a condition in a particular area that's not 500 feet. It could be 1,000 feet, it could be 2,000 feet, it could be 3,000 feet. That's the condition of the permit.
I feel like you're
Vegetative buffer.
participating, and we agreed that we're
Yes.
just gonna ask questions.
Yes,
So,
I'm
I'm
getting
sorry,
texts
but-
constantly.
And
Barry,
Sorry, Barry.
I just feel like we were going against exactly what you just said we were gonna do.
yeah. Okay, so are we agreed 500 on each of these?
No,
No, I
No.
do not agree.
we don't.
We do. I do.
So we're saying a 500-foot setback from the property line. Is that what I'm hearing?
Non-participating property.
Yes. Okay. And
For-
that's for everything. Okay. I'm fine. It seems like we're getting rid of the 3 different scales.
We are.
It goes from
Later on, does that come back up with the vegetative?
I mean, you would just, there would be no tiers. It would just be regardless, 500 feet to property line of non-participating.
Yeah, the tiering is more than what is there, or removing the tiers and putting it at a flat 500 feet is still more than what's set in this as it is, right? So it's still more restrictive than what's already there. So we're already, going toward
Well, number 3 had 500 feet setback,
Yeah.
so,
from a dwelling.
But we changed,
right, so I guess, so we're gonna have tiers at all? Is that what we're saying?
that it doesn't, it's the same for every regardless. And if you're got 3 sides, 4 sides, it's just, it is what it is.
Want to compromise and strengthen so that if solar's done, it's done in a manner that could be agreeable in most locations. A CUP could be filed and get through. I think that cleans it up and does that. By 500 feet, we're getting a long ways away from dwellings. And our vegetative barriers are going to have greater opportunity to shield the neighboring properties from looking at them. That's why I offer both the 500 feet and really want to focus on getting the vegetative right.
I think that when you
think,
have,
Paul, you got a thought in your head, I see.
Yeah, I just have kind of a devil's advocate comment, because I could build a barn, I could build a row of barns to an adjoining property line 10 feet away. That's the current regulations. They could be as ugly that you may not want to look at. It would go through a conditional use permit. No, it would only go through a building permit, right? It would only go through a building permit. no trees, no shrubs, no nothing. So
Building permit with no inspection. It's just you file for the permit.
take that argument up with the commissioners.
Oh, I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with it, but it proves your point, yeah.
It isn't until they burn down. I'm just seriously just playing devil's advocate. So you have a property owner who, with one thing that he wants to build on his property and do something with, he only has to be 10 feet with no barrier. Another thing that he wants to build on his property, he has to be 500 feet away and put the vegetative buffer in. It just seems from the point of the property owner and wanting to do something with his or her property. I know they're not equivalent, but as far as from a regulations point of view, it seems very broad spectrum. When from a landowner's rights point of view, it's like, hey, I want to do something with my property, and here you're making it extremely difficult, and here I could put
You could put a
recycled corrugated metal up for a mile, and
Or fairly.
it's fine. Yeah.
I understand your point.
So, yeah, I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm just,
My interpretation would be that you can put the ugly barn up and you can put a lot of them up, but that land is going to stay zoned what it is. You put the acreage with the solar farms on it, then it has to be zoned industrial. So it's, I understand the property rights. I do get that, but it's not a barn. I mean, it changes our way of life.
It's a business, and it's no different than if someone was gonna build a business next to you, they would have to get a conditional use. Because they would have to be zoned different, and then different regulations would apply.
unless he was a farmer. I mean,
Different regulations apply to an industrial project.
It's an industrial development.
And you have to have different regulations than just your average residential.
Well, I largely agree with you, but if I bought a piece of property and I did my homework and I knew that the neighboring properties were all zoned agricultural, I know that could happen, but I didn't know that someone was gonna file for a variance and ask for it to be changed to industrial, and this could be happening. So I think it's a fair compromise to include some kind of a bigger setback. Maybe 500 is too aggressive. I know that there's some in our group that probably say it's not enough. And so if 500 is far away as I would want to go, but I floated the number.
But throw an idea out, and I'm going back on what I said earlier about basing it around residential. But if you said, because if it's not your house, I think the care is probably less on what the setback is. So what if it was the greater of the two? If it's your house, a greater setback, or for the sake of our conversation here, 500 is what you're saying. It's 500 unless it's your residential dwelling. It has to be 1,000 foot from your residential dwelling, the greater of the two. Because then it protects the homeowner or their house, but it also protects the property. It seems like, as I was thinking it through my mind, it seemed to make sense, because I think what we're really trying to protect is where the houses are. Understand we're protecting future development too, and that's why we're going off the property line and setting it back. I think there may be something there, if you guys think.
Well, I'd be concerned about the gaming of that measurement or the rule. You know, am I going to start living in a barn rather than my house because that advantages me some way?
I would think it would have to be where your residence is at the time that conditional use is asked for. It can't be updated as you move. Because then someone could just build a house next to the property line and have it all moved back. But otherwise, I agree with that.
So
Whichever.
Assumed on this, right?
It is assumed, but it's not. It's good to have it in.
Yeah. Solar panels, I mean, that doesn't make sense.
No, it's grandfathered in.
Yeah, he was saying that that's it. So what would you propose? Something different then? I like what you're saying.
So I think 500 foot from property line or 1,000 foot from a residential dwelling, whichever one's greater.
And any proposal on future residents? Do you make adjustments there, or do you just have to live with it?
I don't think you can if the
You,
project's.
you're 500 foot off already. So no, I don't think, if they chose to build a house on their property line and now they're within 500 feet of solar, then that's what they chose to do. But we're still, I think we're still thinking about that by setting it back 500 now from the property line. I think something along those lines is a reasonable compromise that protects the homeowners now. And understanding that, short of a total ban, that's their side may feel that 1,000 foot isn't enough. I'm just throwing that out there. So, but I think it protects you from the houses.
But I'd still have the right to say 1,000's too far. You can come closer to me if you want to pay me for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I see your heads nodding.
I
Is
like
the
that.
500 for a general property line too much?
I don't think so at
I
all.
don't think so.
Because I think you got to protect future rights of that land. I understand that there's property owner rights of the people that own the land too, but I think it's a fair compromise.
Sure.
Go ahead, were you want to say something?
I don't know. I mean, 500 for sure is the most that I would go for. I'm looking at maybe 250 again, because you do have to protect the landowner's right of the person that wants to do it. You can't just protect the people that don't want to. And I mean, that's something that I don't ever hear talked about here, is what the people who want to do it.
Paul talked about it.
Yeah, he did.
It's a delicate balance.
But, and actually, going into that, I mean, you're talking about the forum. I think that we should have the scientific survey for sure done. And I have a question there. Right, while I'm on this real quick, I'm gonna go off for a minute. Could you check to see if the ARPA would pay for the scientific survey?
I can.
So
The land is leased by acre, correct? So that property owner they're leasing their land, they're leasing their whole section of land by acre. So what does the setback have to do with it? Because they got to lease up that whole parcel of land from them anyway. So you're protecting the property owner's rights. They're getting paid the same regardless.
If you had a 40-acre plot of land, right, and you said, hey, I don't want to get rid of this land, but I also don't want to just see it follow and not earning any income, and you say, hey, why not do a solar field? And when you start getting into the regulations and everything, even if you had a partner that was willing, as soon as they came down, it's like, for this 40 acres of land, we are going to get this little postage stamp of solar panels on it. There's no way you're going to do it, right? Then you're effectively taking away that landowner's ability to generate revenue with that land that he owns, she owns, because you have made it so restricted that it becomes, if not impossible, it becomes improbable. And that's the argument, right?
I can understand the argument. I think we have to, there still has to be regulations regardless.
my estimation, well-done regulations would do a couple things. They wouldn't be so difficult to navigate that it would scare away most commercial solar farms, meaning they would still want to do business here. I can work with these regulations. It's going to cost me more, but I'm still going to come. And at the same time, you have given up enough in concessions that people that have concerns about them, while they still may not like them, are agreeable that it's the right thing to do for the county. That's a very delicate balance. You're never going to win everybody over and say that they'll agree to solar energy, but you can get more people on board. And I don't think we're giving up too much by going to 500 feet. And the 1,000.
I don't
Knowing
either.
that there's a process to work with a landowner that's agreeable to shrink that.
And if solar comes to your front door, then you can sign the good neighbor agreement and
Absolutely.
it's right there. Your back door.
If I wanted to do it, and then it's not just, hey, you can have this in your backyard if you want to, if you're the one owning the land.
I don't think.
I don't think that at all because that's
The
being a
reality
good
of
neighbor.
a whole bunch of 40-acre solar fields popping up, I just don't think it's a reality.
It's not.
It's too much money to get them going.
Yeah, it's not. So I understand your concern. I just don't think it's a reality. And I don't think it's gonna be a reality anytime in the near future.
We have 44 acres, 46, and they didn't even call us. They didn't even stop by.
Unless you could hook up as part of another,
No, we're getting it three sides of us. They didn't even contact us. So I don't know the reasoning behind that, but
It's not out of the question though for Evergy and Heartland to, I mean, they already do offer buyback for, I could put a small amount of panels on my property for a buyback program from Heartland. And, that would be on 40 acres. I don't know how much they would want to put on there, but it would be a complete gray area as far as these are concerned. And it wouldn't be a farm, it would be residential, but it would be buyback, and so it's going back on the system, therefore it's making money, therefore it falls into commercial.
Are you, I've checked with Heartland on that and they told me I can't do that.
If I remember
don't.
right, it's limited to 12 kilowatts, which is.
It is for Heartland, but not for,
Evergy.
well, I'm back up. I was thinking percentages, not kilowatts. It's 10% for Heartland because they can't be a producer.
Yeah.
But not Evergy.
I think they do.
So I'm just throwing that out. Again, I'm just trying to muddy the waters. And,
Are you playing devil's advocate? I get it.
I think buyback programs are stupid, but the math doesn't work. But it turns a residential property into a commercial solar operation by this definition because it's going back on the grid.
But if you own the house, you can say, I want it there. There's nothing stopping you from doing it.
Yes, but the neighbor doesn't have any of this kind of leverage. We keep talking about it, won't have it on 40 acres, and I could do it on 40 acres. With a buyback deal.
Wouldn't most buyback be considered domestic though? You would use a
If
partial.
it's selling back though, we said if it goes back on the grid, it has to be used completely on property according to our regulations.
The majority has 51%.
Oh, okay.
So
Your memory is
That's what we
younger than
agreed
mine.
Problem solved.
Yes,
So what is it again?
it's 51%. You have to use 51% of the energy you collect on your property
Over
Anything-
what of time, or is it?
over the year. I think. Yeah,
So there could be peaks and valleys. From
I think like an
Dave,
average over the year. I don't think we put it in there. We could, but
So Daniel, back to your,
we probably should.
Probably should put that in.
Is that what this was?
back to your original idea, 500 feet on property lines,
Non-participating property
non-participating property lines, 1,000 feet from a residential.
From a non-participating resident.
residents.
And I think at that, I don't think you need it. Do you?
Tier.
Tiers.
We would maintain the tiers for the vegetative setbacks though.
The tiers on.
Separate issue.
Say that again.
Everyone wants to talk about the vegetative setbacks. I get that. I'm talking about this right now.
Vegetative setbacks.
For the buffers.
Yeah.
Because they're still tiers.
So I guess I'm getting a sense in the room. We're okay with Daniel's proposal.
Well, I have one question. So residential, like my neighbor has solar, less than 10 acres. He's now gonna have to go by, if he were to build again, the 500 feet and not the 25 feet? Even if it's just residential, or am I not
He
understanding
sells
that?
more than half of the electricity produced at his.
Okay,
house.
and then you said that, but
If you
I'm
sell
trying to
more than-
see like, where is that? Where
Well, I
was
think it
that?
should be in there. I mean, we should.
The cutoff is if you sell more than half, you're no longer considered domestic.
Okay,
And that's
is
when the
Is that a
setbacks-
definition?
That's
somewhere?
is that in a definition?
1411. That's not.
Maybe,
That's page 14 too.
14201A.
oh, 201.
You want me to read it?
Yep, i.e. 51% or greater.
Perfect. Thank you.
Does that address your question, Ron?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
I just always flipping back and forth and trying to find it all. It just, to me, it's confusing. Is no one else confused?
No, it's complicated. It's complicated.
Okay.
and- But we try to do the best to keep it simple, but
Well,
I can remember when our consultant was working with us, he says, you can write hundreds of pages on this if you want, but he says, you can't, you got hundreds of pages, you just can't manage it. So you've got to keep it as,
Would there be an opportunity to put like C section 14201A under this?
Well, so
Is
it
that
says
not-
for SECS, and SECS is all capitalized, it means it's a defined term. So, and it's defined under the definitions.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's,
I thought it was just an acronym.
So did I.
That's capitalized. Are there others that are italicized and all
I
capitalized?
thought that was solar energy conversion systems.
it could, but regardless, it's defined in here on what it is.
yeah.
But
Domestic and commercial are underlined, denoting that there's a definition for them in 14-1.
it says the county requires all SECs other than those used for domestic purposes to apply for and receive a conditional use permit.
Okay.
Don't, unless it talks about it over here, I don't think it talks about rooftop solar that might not do this, or might be battery mounted, or it's more than 1%, but I think that's passive discussion here, because I don't think we have any rooftops that are gonna get us there
you
anyway.
know, and the only section in the regulations that talk about domestic is 14.3. And then everything else is
Okay.
about commercial or utility.
Darren, do you have to give a permit to put solar on your home? Okay.
Okay. Are we,
So I have more to add if
okay?
we can on, I'm not done with setbacks. Substations, inverter setbacks, we don't have anything in there regarding inverter setbacks and stations. I didn't know if we could look into that. I know Butler County, I think I emailed that out. Butler County had examples of what theirs looks like, sounds like.
Do you think it needs to, yeah, do you think it needs to be greater than?
Yeah, I do. On the inverter station, substations, if they do go, I mean, those are, and also, I mean, are we allowing battery storage
So
to be built?
educate us on inverters. Why do you think it needs to be more than 1,000 feet?
So I've heard a lot, so the electromagnetic, different things with the frequencies, as far as the noise, the vibration, just, I don't know, there were some articles, but again, I don't have them pulled. I can send them out to Darren again. But it was mainly the frequencies being so close to your home, vibrations and things like that. It just makes you go,
It affects kids, it affects people that have, that are autistic. It's in research. I would be more than happy. I will personally send to Darren tomorrow and you guys can have all the information on that.
yeah, I think it's going to be an
promise.
article. Is that not going to be sufficient?
No, it depends on who
An
the,
article wouldn't be
An
sufficient.
article is not sufficient. I want a scientific study.
Scientific
Yeah,
study.
we want a scientific
So
study
can we,
done
okay,
prior to the
okay.
project.
You know what, that's a great idea. Can we put that in the regulations that the scientific study should be done prior to inverter stations being built?
A scientific study that says it causes harm.
Yeah.
You can show us that.
Or it
Yeah,
doesn't
like
cause
why can't the solar company provide that? Like those are some of the things that
or in other regulations.
he
Spencer
sort of
County.
wants to talk, I think, but we can't, we're not letting him.
Well, I can't
right,
see
right.
him,
Oh,
so if
very
he's
good.
raising his hand, the chair would have to address him, not
Very
me.
put up his hand.
Are you referring to more like a peer-reviewed article
Correct.
and not just
Peer-reviewed article. Okay.
more
What
verified
would your
article?
suggestion be on an inverter? Not setback.
Half mile.
He'll have to talk.
It's not up to me.
Sure.
I just wanted to, I appreciate these questions. These are legitimate concerns, but,
Yeah.
so out of the open houses that we did, we specifically addressed these because you asked, you noted these for, you've been consistent in your concern. So I appreciate that very much.
Thanks, Barry.
There are three things that we noted here on this slide that we provided at our event, and I'll just because it's too small.
Just about inverters then?
Yeah, so it's both about noise and inverters. So the concern about, so by the way, inverters are always on the inside of the project. They're never on the outside of the project. You gather the power in the middle of the project. So by their very definition, they are much further away from a property line than the solar panel that's at the end of a line. Okay, so they are by their very nature deep into the project. So we specifically sought information about EMF, which is electromagnetic fields, and EMF radiation degrades very, very quickly. So numerous studies, I mean, this is really well understood, electromagnetic fields we've understood for a couple hundred years. At about 150 feet, they have degraded, particularly from modern inverters, they have degraded to the ambient background level, right? So this is, right now, this is offering EMF. There's a small EMF field around this and around all of our cell phones. So the inverters.
Reviewed study that has that information.
Yeah, and I'm happy to provide the committee with the peer-reviewed articles about EMF degradation over distance. And so, again, our view was that the 500-foot setbacks are more than sufficient. That's obviously well more than 150 feet to handle EMF degradation, coupled with the fact that they're always in the middle of the project and not on the outside of the project. So on noise, that's been brought up twice. We have handled noise in other venues by doing a background study, it's just called an ambient noise background study. So while again, that would be an additional cost to us, I don't think we would be opposed to it. Okay. But I can tell you what we will find, because it has been found in hundreds of wind and solar studies. This is not an infrequent thing, is that essentially that inverters, when they're operating, when you're standing next to them, produce about 65 to 70 decibels of sound. And then at about 150 feet, it degrades, essentially the noise degrades at approximately the same rate as the EMF does. At about 150 feet, it's at ambient levels. And in particular, in very rural areas where frequently there's wind as well, and that's certainly the case in Kansas, that rate of noise degradation is even faster. And so I hope that allays some concerns that you may have about what the industry has studied many times as people have brought these issues up. So we're happy to provide the committee this information and to you guys.
So that's helpful information. What would you propose for?
Well, I was just wondering, with what you just said, I mean, that's something that you probably already, it wouldn't be a big deal to put it in the regulations, right? For you to provide that information, like.
Well, I mean,
Put what though?
So
Well, for
the
example,
noise, the
would you be
EMF,
okay
all that stuff.
putting 60 decibel maximum noise at the non-participating property line.
Yeah, something like that.
yeah.
Yeah, because we already went over that. I already mentioned that on the Douglas County regulations, noise in #1.
What-
And I already read that out.
Yes.
I like the idea of ensuring that it's not going to be noisy if I have a solar farm. I felt a lot better after listening to you talk about the clicking sound essentially was the noise that you heard at the small solar farm that you visited. I also know there's a chance that an inverter could make noise, or it's likely that it is up close. What do we do if it's supposed to be 60 decibels and it's constructed and it's greater than that? Does that mean a vegetative?
It's just like
At
the thing-
unit or
No,
at the?
at the
If it exceeds-
non-participating property.
Yeah.
line. The same thing as if they build it within 200 feet of the non-participating property line. It's not within the regulations. It's not acceptable.
So they'd have to take corrective action.
They shut it down and don't
He
bring it
said-
back until it meets compliance
He
rules.
said 60, Barry said 60 decibels at the non-participating property.
Yeah, I'm making that assumption as well, but I wanted everyone to get it out and open that that's the understanding, that it's got to become compliant or they're not going to be allowed to be operational. So it sounds like we wouldn't be asking too much to put it in the regulations to have 60 decibels at a property line.
Right.
That's not a big ask. What is something, without looking myself, what does 60 decibels equate to that each of us could identify?
That's exactly what I'm looking up right now, Googling it.
So the air conditioner outside your,
Correct.
It's 37 to what?
37 to 82 decibels.
Okay.
That's what an air conditioner.
standing beside it.
Correct.
I wouldn't hear that most likely from 100 feet away. My ear kick on.
I mean, everybody lives with their air conditioner.
Yeah, right.
But they're
Well,
saying
they-
that it shouldn't exceed 60. at 500 feet. It shouldn't exceed. So yes, we would have to live with an air conditioner noise constantly. That's what that is saying in these regulations I'm proposing. I'm saying I would live with an air conditioner noise at 60 decibels.
You'd be agreeable to that?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, this,
I mean, it's
I
not,
don't know if this has been peer reviewed. It's just a Google image.
Yeah.
But it says that noise level of 60 decibels is similar to normal conversation background music.
Yeah.
That's what it says.
All right. Are we done with setbacks?
well, I mean, noise. So, I mean, in Douglas County regulations, N, O, and P, I sent that out
Thank you.
to Darren. I would like to add in, which goes over noise. I would like to add under N 1, 2, 3, and 4. It talks about the transformers, the inverters, other sound and vibration. It all goes back to has to be 60 decibels or under at 500 feet from residential, not property line.
Let's do this. You've already got that verbiage to Darren?
Well, I just sent the entire document. So when I say in 1, 2, 3, 4, I think that would be easier for you.
Well, if you would email your
I can do that.
language and specifically where it should go and all that to Darren.
Okay.
He gets it to us. We'll talk about that next week.
Okay, and so also under noise, it goes into O. O is talking about the electrical interconnections. I would just like you guys to read through that and see if it's something you're willing to add into the regulations.
Add it to what you send Darren.
N and O.
Darren will send it to us and we'll talk about it next week.
Okay.
Now, let's move on to vegetation.
Okay, I'm actually not done with the wildlife refuge on setbacks. I'm sorry. I have a lot of stuff on wildlife. So, you guys well, first of all, the wildlife corridors was eliminated. I think we're going to go over that later. But as far as if we want to keep working on setbacks, I'm still on setbacks for the National Wildlife Refuge and also the Kansas Wildlife. I sent emails to Darren. I don't know if you guys got them. So if you got them, you did? Okay, great. So I don't know where you guys want to start on this. If you would like to start with the state.
One thing I would kind of like to get the feel from everyone, how
Yeah.
they just feel about it in general.
Yeah,
I think,
sure.
let's see, I think it was in Butler County. It's in a couple different counties that I've seen that there is a setback from the federal wildlife
Yeah.
areas, from airports and from cities. Does anyone have any opinions?
I'd assume they build the solar field at the airport. That would make sense.
Make things more useful.
Well, that would mean that the city of Pleasanton would get the money, right?
Yeah,
Not the county.
something would be done at the airport.
I think there's a lot of people in the county that are concerned about the wildlife refuge there. So I think it's,
I believe it was the Audubon Society. It was either that or the it was another section of the county over there where they suggested a 3-mile setback. I think that might be a bit far. That's definitely on the higher end of what I've seen.
That's way outside my comfort zone.
Mine-
Considering we're agreeable to do things like build a Keystone Pipeline or drill in the Arctic Wildlife National Refuge because it helps gather fossil fuels. To say that we can't build a solar array within 3 miles of a wildlife when we're drilling in other reserves, I have a huge problem with 3 miles.
do you happen to have the map that Mark had last week?
We do not.
I don't have it. I will say, did you read
He
through?
didn't have a PDF I asked last week because I wanted to play around with it
I
a
was
little bit to
wondering
see
how
what it does and didn't do.
Well,
Each land,
we have
it
to,
directly adjoins state and county, right?
yes.
Or state and federal.
And that's what we'll be able to see on our tour, right?
You plan on going on the federal?
So we don't have any wildlife setbacks in here now.
No, see how close it is.
We included language that if you have a wildlife corridor, it'd be specified on the site plan, so you know where it's at during consideration of the CUP.
But you were talking about the wildlife refuge.
Yeah.
Correct? Yes.
Well, they did a study in 2022.
I mean, I'll read it to you. So this is from the Department of Wildlife and Parks, Kansas. This is regarding endangered species. I'll just read the last line. Again, this was sent out to you. All suitable wetlands, waters, and moist wooded bottomlands occurring within the portion of Cherokee County. So it talks about Cherokee, and then it goes down into Linn. So then it goes into Linn. It says all suitable wetlands, water, and moist wooded bottomland occurring within 5 air miles of the Marine Wildlife Refuge in Linn County. So what they are considering a critical habitat is a 5 air mile radius. So that is a critical habitat. So if we are not going to think that that is important, I guess that is fine. There are also a few other options with landowners. We can actually file a few different things through Senate bills that have been passed. I do know that they would have to do a Kansas action permit application. So that is required by the law that they would have to do this because it's within the 5 air mile radius. These protected species are.
So there's a provision for a waiver
There
of that requirement.
is
That's what that
one,
definition is.
and that is only accepted after the conditional use permit. So it might be something that we could just note in there that they have to file or follow Kansas law. Well,
So Ellie,
I don't think it actually is.
I'm a little confused on the 5 mile radius. From what point or do you measure the radius? Is it the,
So I sent out an email to Darren, and he should have forwarded that to you, and it shows the 5 air mile radius that they suggest.
but is it based on the perimeters or?
It's based on, so the way Pam did it was just the headquarters of each. But it is property line, but because that was so hard for her to get 5 mile air radius on all of those, there'd be a lot of circles. She just did it from each headquarter office. That was on the map that I had sent out. If you look at, so Clearway and Olson had sent from Zach Eddy, they do have their preliminary report back that I shared with you guys as well. Trying to think where that one is. And then also, so I would suggest a 5 mile air radius prohibition for solar in that area. And then also, where is that one? On the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, they also gave some setbacks depending on if we were in a migratory bird. They referenced the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act, pollinator recommendations. So that was something I was looking at as well that I thought you guys might want to look back on that. So I don't know if you guys want to take it into consideration, but we would like for you to at least discuss it on the setbacks for the wildlife refuge.
At this, I think it's one of the properties is directly across on 52 from
Yeah,
the new
mine.
entrance that they did.
We have state laws regulating this, then they've probably done more research and put more into that than we ever bring to bear on it. So it, to me, seems logical that regardless of what you do, you're gonna be following Kansas state law. If we want to put it in here, say you, Kansas state law includes all of these recommendations, right?
That's a
And
given.
that way we get all of those.
Usually we say that in a conditional use permit, you have to follow all state regulations and, you know.
Yeah, but your point's well taken. Just a couple of sentences or a small paragraph saying, as far as wildlife areas and properties, we follow state law.
So as a committee, I just want to make sure I understand that there are no interest in putting a setback on the federal or state wildlife refuge.
In addition to what is required by state law. I mean, I don't have any desire to do that.
In state,
I'm not on the committee, but.
And we can't supersede state law anyway. We can say that we're going to comply with what the state requires us to do, but we can't make it more restrictive than what the state does. I mean, that's
Any county regulation has to follow state and federal guidelines.
absolutely, yeah. So I think just stating it like you're suggesting is probably the best way to go.
I'm not familiar with this. What is, the state law says that you have to contact a certain agency in regard to
So-
anything in the 5 mile radius. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so there were different steps. I had talked to Zach Eddy quite a few times, but again, this is all new to me. So, with their initial plan, they have to contact Kansas Wildlife and Parks, and then they sent in their first. I think they do one, and that's what this first one that was sent out. I think it was in June of 2022. Once the conditional use permit is filed, then they have to go out and do another one, I think, and then they do a final when they come here. So there is still a possibility that where they're going, they would have to move 50 acres of that endangered species and create another area for them. They might reduce, but not necessarily guaranteed. But I think there are a few hoops that you have to jump through for the company for sure. And I think it's the Kansas Action Permit application is what it's called.
They can't deny a project going in, but they can say, these are the things that I need you to do because of what's going on down here.
Yeah.
Or what's with the solar panels coming in, being across the street from it.
Yeah, so basically they put it like, well, obviously that's not in their best interest that they would want that to be so close. However, they don't tend to tell property owners no. They just try to work with them and try to do what's best for the habitats. So I do think that since we know that they don't really tell them no, I think that if you thought that the area was important to tourism, to duck hunters, to all of the tourism that you get here through that, that's not the first thing that they see when they come here. We also have a scenic byway that you can't put a billboard on, but we're going to line it up with solar panels. It just seems pretty bizarre, but
Nonsensical.
if we don't put anything in there, we have contacted the Scenic Byways Committee and they just hadn't run into this yet. You can look at, was it the Flint Hills? I mean, they put a prohibition in the Flint Hills. So when people are driving through their county in the Flint Hills, they don't have to look at solar. I think that's an option for us to put a setback for the highway. I think it's an option. If that's something we don't want people to see that when they are driving through our county, I think that it's something to consider.
I would like a setback from the wildlife refuge, but it looks like I might be outnumbered.
I'm not against the discussion of it.
I don't think 5 miles is right for the whole area, but I think it should be
It's still
considered.
all out of 500 feet, right?
Yes,
You're talking about something significant.
something in additional, yeah, in addition,
Well,
And what is to be gained from this?
to protect the wildlife refuge, to
Like,
preserve.
which
yeah, the migratory birds,
being able to land on a solar panel?
it kills them at times. And I do have documentation. Yes, it depends, and they get stuck in, I'm not making this up. There's documentation on this. And the Ducks Unlimited, the Audubon, and a lot of the duck clubs down here are highly opposed to it, which they'll speak.
But they're not opposed to renewables. And they've said
Yeah.
that if you watched any of the videos, I mean, they are not opposed to that. They've asked for a setback, like Audubon, and I know a few others. They asked for a setback, and I can't remember the number, but maybe I can go back and watch that.
I think Audubon was 3 miles, and that's a little
Okay.
much for me, but
Okay,
I like
but
the idea.
exactly. I mean, you're asking about certain things that it's probably not important to you. You probably aren't going out bird watching over there. That's probably not what you would do. But people do that. They sit on my road constantly and watch birds. Okay, people come from the city all the time to this refuge. They just put in a multi-million-dollar trail. I mean, and now you're gonna ride across the road, have solar panels. It's just maybe help protect it a little bit of what people that are here visiting are seeing.
I want to personally put the priorities of the majority of the county ahead of visitors to the area. And I think the tax consideration and the benefits for our county outweigh that personally. So I don't want to set a major setback from the wildlife refuge.
I think the wildlife refuge is a major asset this county has. We've got to protect it. It draws in visitors, it draws in tax money. We've got to protect it, and going with a 2 or 3 mile setback is not going to limit that much your solar development. And I'm not looking at a map right now, but it's not like saying no to solar. We're protecting our asset.
I think that would be covered by the comprehensive plan as well. That one of the main tenets is to preserve the native wildlife of Linn County and also preserve the general feel of it. And
I'm going to jump in on that one too for a minute. I think that the whole committee, before we make any decisions, needs to go over the comprehensive plan and read what it does say. Because that is very interesting what it does say. I mean, it has things like that. So in making a decision, we need to do that. So.
How many acres is a wildlife refuge? I've heard.
7,000 each, so 14 over, like, I think it was over 14,000 total. And they each pay close to 18,000 every year in a pilot program. They have one of them since like the 1950s, the other one since 1991. And again, I'm going off what they have told me, not what your county has told me, because I can't get that information right now.
So again, to go back to the pilot deal, you don't have a problem, or you're not contending whether or not they've made those payments annually. You just may be unhappy with how it's being spent because you don't know how those dollars are being spent.
well, the
I
convention,
think that we were tasked with not only coming here and defending why we don't want solar, but also we were asked to, well, what are if we don't do solar, what are we going to do? And it's like they're putting that pressure on us, I feel like, to figure out how are we going to get the income? And I just feel like that's not our job. I think number one, it was to figure out what the county wants. That's number one. Also, going back to that comp survey, because we talked about this a lot with the public forum, what was the purpose of that? Who can speak? When you go back to that comprehensive survey, this was a QR code that was sent out to anyone that got on Facebook and wanted to click on the link. This was something, you got a postcard in the mail if you lived here and you could click on it. Anyone could click on it. 558 people took the survey. You have no idea who took it. You have none. And we were basing our entire decisions off of this comp plan.
But I also do want to clarify something about some misinformation about that. Is that there was a question on the survey under number 7 that said, what is your opinion about the following emerging issues in Linn County? And it says wind turbine, commercial development in Linn County, and solar panel, commercial development. Those were the actual questions I got them from Pam Cannon. So.
Paul read the summary of the response.
Right, but he didn't know that it said solar commercial when you read that.
I just read
I don't.
Understand, I think the point is 580 people filled it out. And that's not even close to a majority of the county. So we're basing our opinions to what Ally is saying. We're basing a whole lot on what 580 people said.
So
And they weren't all for it.
Well, I don't think that's what we're talking about right now. I think it's a great idea.
I think, what do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea.
How many people do you think should be in it? I mean, they can choose how many people they want.
Well, none of
So
us.
I don't do scientific surveys, so I'd say the people that we hire to do that needs to give us that answer, not us tell them.
Based on the demographics of the county.
But what if they say 500? You're gonna say, well, that doesn't matter.
That's not what I'm gonna say.
Well, they'll need to lay out their logic of how many they're surveying, how it's stratified and all that stuff. I mean, they do that every day, and they're pros at it. So
I just had the
I'm going to come back to this issue that I raised a few weeks ago. We keep trying to get through this, but we don't really know what the people of the county want, or the people that have involvement in this county. And I said this earlier, we can go through this whole thing and write new regs, and then we'll find out at the forum, or a scientific survey afterwards, or a referendum, that's not really what the county wanted anyway. And it was throwaway work. And I'm really coming back to this. What we've been doing the last few weeks here is just, it may be throwaway work because we don't know really what the county wants. And and those have the vested interest in the county want.
Well, the good thing is we have a 1-year moratorium and it's like we're just hammer, 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 hammer. But we can take a breath. We can go look at the area.
Well, I raised this early on, and as a group, we kind of decided, okay, we'll go ahead with trying to find the common ground, which is my quote, on all this. But I tell you what, I don't think it's possible for us to find that common ground until we really know more about what the constituents really want.
So why don't we take a pause until we know when our forum date is now? Let's take a pause till the forum date, get feedback from the forum, and then reconvene.
That's where I was headed. But we'll have to reconvene after we have the forum to figure out where things are.
Right.
Because then we may have to have either a referendum or a scientific study beyond that.
I agree.
And you're right. The moratorium's for a year. I mean, we're not pressed for time yet. We've got plenty of time to work this thing out.
So there was one commissioner on Monday who said, let's don't do it this way we're doing it. And there were 2 commissioners that said, go ahead, we want to get the regulations done before the forum.
Well, with the blessing of this group, I'm willing to go to the commission and say, what you've wanted us to do is not working.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what, as a collective group, we think will work. Lay out what I just laid out for them and let them tell us where they're at.
I think that I would probably maybe go along with that if you also went to the city with a scientific survey done.
I don't agree. I think the first step is the forum.
And then we'll learn from that. We'll stop, we'll learn from that, and then we decide the next step.
Before we spend $15,000-$20,000 on a scientific survey, let's see what happens at the forum. If that's not good enough, then the commissioners can decide whether to do a referendum or to do a survey.
Or both.
Or both.
But I think I remember, and I agree with Jeff, because I'm a grant writer, and I've got a lot of surveys, different things. And I agree with Jeff that the public forum is the worst opt-in way to get public opinion.
You did
Well,
win.
we'll do it. We'll assess that afterwards.
There's gonna be a lot of frustration at how quickly 2 minutes goes by and I didn't get my point across. You better be quick with your introduction of yourself and get to your point and develop a script. The public forum's not likely to move the needle for me because of the opt-in nature of it.
Well, who does it move the
but
needle for?
It would, I just want to say one other thing. It's going to provide some great anecdotal evidence. And when someone brings something anecdotal, that causes me to rethink things and do more research as we come back as a group. Yeah.
We just talked about it last week. Finding number 1, Paul Porter had mentioned this, is if the county wants it or not. That's number 1, right? Of your 5 findings. So, and that's not going to move your needle.
A forum won't do that because it's opt-in. And we've got.
But your needle moved on this survey then.
Here's what moved my needle tonight. We've got a folder of information that we're upset about because, quote, somebody that doesn't live in the county was involved. But we're going to have a forum and let as many people who don't live in the county that want to come speak. Bird watchers, duck hunters, people that love solar energy or hate solar energy. Doesn't matter. So we want outside input when it advances our cause. We don't want it when it harms it.
I thought the point was to get what our community wanted. I thought
And
that
that
was
can't
it.
be done.
And so you
And
think the forum, I'm just trying to clarify, you think the forum is not necessary then, in your eyes?
I went on the record and say, I think the forum is something that we should be doing because people need an opportunity to be heard. However, I do not think it will give us a true test of how the whole county feels about
We'll
it.
find out on,
So then I guess just clarification, when that forum's done, regardless of which way it goes, we're still going to be working on the regulations.
Absolutely.
That's what
So if
that
you
sounds
have
like. So I'm trying to figure out why I don't understand.
I'm with Jeff on this. It allows the public to voice their concerns.
Yes.
I mean, it may be more cathartic than anything else, but I think it's an important step.
Okay.
And we've already agreed, we're going to hear that, we know the limitations of it, and then we're going to move forward to decide what's the best thing to do next. Referendum, scientific study, both, or something else. But I think we'll be better informed after that forum.
I agree.
Oh, man.
So to be sure that we're going back to the commissioners with a clear message, do we need put something in writing? Do we need to, all agree on what we're going back with?
I mean, that sounds great, but how are we gonna do that?
Yeah.
Richard, would you like to speak?
I'd be glad to speak. And really, I just reiterate what I've said to you folks tonight. And I'm not gonna change that script. I mean, that's what's in my head, so.
And what, say that again. What are you gonna present the commissioners with?
We're gonna have the forum. We understand that there'll be a lot of varied opinions on that and that there may not be agreement on anything, but it's informing to us and it's important to do. After that, we're gonna get together and decide what next step ought to be done. Should we do a scientific survey? Should we do a referendum vote? Both? Or is there something else? We'll just have to decide that after we've seen the first, the forum.
I'm good.
And we'll come back and report to you what we got, and we'll look for your direction to help us forge forward with this. We've got a year. We have a year, and we're not near the end of that year yet. We've got plenty of time to do this and do it right.
As we seek more information, we would still do the visit, the on-site visit in February.
Absolutely. Yeah, that will change. Yeah, yep.
Well, the way you presented it, Richard, I'm good with that. That sounds like a good.
All right. That's the only thing I can remember. So that's what I'll do.
Jenna Baker.
All right.
So
Are
we
we all okay with
want,
that? Daniel? You good? Okay, all right. Ms. Staton?
Yes.
That's what I was going to call her. Emily, I was going to call her Elizabeth. No, I said, no, I just call her Ms. Staton. All right.
we won't reconvene until we hear from you.
That's true.
Except for the field.
Yep. Except for the field trip. But no more meetings until further notice.
We have our regular.
Yeah, we got the regular planning on board. Okay, any last comments? Meeting adjourned. 7. Yeah, 7. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, Richard. Heard and gets.